So today should start on item 258, if I'm not mistaken. And we are now dealing with the chapter that deals with identity of spirits. And just to recap what you have seen so far, basically Kardec leaves clear to us that what's really important is the message and not really the messenger. Having said that, we are in a period of our evolutionary path that we kind of pay attention to the messengers as well. And the good spirits understand that, and therefore they try to assist us with this issue. And the problem with identifying spirits who communicates to us is that some may use names inappropriately, trying to sell us something in name of someone else. That makes it important for us to be careful in our identity of spirit, especially when the spirits identify themselves. When they say, and here we deal primarily with psychographies. And here we're dealing primarily of mediumship, of receiving messages, and not necessarily with the work of rescue that we usually do in our center. I think it's important to make this differentiation here. Kardec gives us very practical means of at least recognizing that the message has value, therefore I could use it. And if that's the case, we use it regardless of whoever provides to us. Kardec also let us know that spirits like ourselves, once we leave behind the physical body, we don't stop progressing. We don't stop changing ourselves continuously to the better. Therefore, if you receive a message that is signed by a historical figure, and I'm going to say a historical figure because if someone that is unknown to anyone, so it doesn't really matter. But if you receive a message of someone that is a historical figure that you happen to know a little bit about that reincarnation, which that spirit had that personality, we do not expect that spirit to be exactly the same as was 1,500, 2,000 years ago. That spirit is also progressing, and perhaps some of the views that it had then are hopefully much better today, since being 2,500 or 500 years ago. In the path of progress, things should change. But there will be some characteristics that perhaps will lead us to accept that that signature is indeed from that spirit that sometime in the past played a role of a historical figure. Another thing that is important is that the more evolved we become, the more alike we become to one another. Again, if you use the analogy of a pyramid, with the base is very wide and there's tremendous diversion. So that's us unevolved yet. And as we start to progress, moving up towards perfection that awaits us, the perfection at the very top of that pyramid, when you get close to that top, the differentials become extremely minimal already. How much variation can be there in perfection? Not much. We will remain our identity, but we will be pretty much like one another because we have reached perfection. It can't be so different. So for the highly evolved spirits to use each other's name in order to help to assist us is it's a good thing. It's not a crime. Okay, and again, I use this example with a very highly evolved spirit who had his last reincarnation, let's say 2,000 years ago in China, comes to a spiritual center in Brazil, give us give a wonderful message, aside its Chinese name, would say, who is this guy? We don't recognize. But being there, one of the comrades with, let's say, Bezerra Jimenez, they're working together, trying to help us. That spirit who played the role of a Chinese person 2,000 years ago may choose to sign Bezerra Jimenez's, which would be a lot more meaningful to us, which would lead us to pay a lot more close attention to that message. It's something that is done not to, it's not fraudulent, it's not done to deviate our attention to something negative, it's something positive. Now, if I discard today and next week I give a message and assign Bezerra Jimenez, then it's fraud. Because the difference on the scale of evolutionary path of Bezerra Jimenez and Elmo can be measured in light years. The only way to make that differentiation. Therefore, it will be a fraud. The board would be very inappropriate for me to do such a thing. It's very important to remember. He also makes a differentiation of identify spirits of a more general manner and a more intimate manner. Meaning that, again, if you go to a spirit that provides a message and signs, I don't know, by whatever name I think there now, Abraham Lincoln. We may know of Abraham Lincoln, the historical figure. We can read his biographies. We can have a good idea of what that spirit when he played the role of Lincoln was by reading his things and get an idea of his writing styles and be able to make some identification through that. But it's something more intimate, like it's my mother who came in and gives us psychography to one of the leaders in the group, and at the bottom sign my mother's name. Then it becomes something very intimate to me. That's something that I will identify by the way she's using the words, but perhaps a nickname that she used to call me, but perhaps recalling something that on one of our conversations we have in the past. And if the spirit that signs my mother's name does not carry that same style, does not perhaps recognize that she should not really call me by Elmo, but through a different name, and none of that, then it creates a level of suspicion that perhaps not my mother. So Kardec makes the differentiate of the identity on a more broad way, more general, and a very intimate one. I love the one, someone that is particular to me, and it makes the identification easier for us to do it. I'm sorry. And now let's read to 58. Somebody's any questions? All right, let's read.
Okay. 258. Even though they refuse to answer puerile and absurd questions, which we would not dare ask of them if they were alive, spirits nonetheless often provide spontaneous and unarguable proof as to their identity. They do so by revealing their character through their language, by the use of expressions that have been peculiar to them, and by referring to certain significant events and particularities of their lives that are sometimes unknown to their audience, but whose veracity may nevertheless be verified. Proofs of identity also result from many unforeseen circumstances that do not always appear the first time, but which do so in subsequent manifestations. Thus, it is prudent to wait for them instead of eliciting them, cautiously observing all those that may spring from the nature of the communications.
So as I said, that what really matters is message, not the messenger. And of course, we're dealing here with more evolved spirits, it's a specific passage. They recognize our need to associate messages to messengers, to tie up things together. And they will, with limitations, of course, provide information to us that leads us to recognize or to accept the signature at the end of the psychography with the personality that signs it. While incarnate, none of us would like to be questioned, to be put to have to prove ourselves. We don't like that. No one likes that. And Kardec puts over here that spirits nonetheless often provide spontaneous and unarguable proof of their identity. Out of the goodwill, out of the intention of us to really pay good attention to that message, to value that message, they will go an extra yard to help us. Perhaps what free from the limitations of the flesh, what is incarnate, we may become a little bit more patient. We may become a little bit more proudful. We may become a little more understanding of the difficulty of others. And since we are dealing here with already some more about the spirits, their goal, the objective is to teach us, to guide us. And they'll do everything that they can to accomplish that, even if they have to subjugate themselves to give some proofs of their identities. But again, the most important means of identifying would be through their languages, would be to the styles, would be with the expressions that have been peculiar to them, academic places over here. And they may provide information related to that reincarnation that they had here in a more spontaneous way. And Kardec suggests that it should not be questioning, putting them to interrogations. You have to prove who you are and tell me this, tell me on the year 1951, where were you? What did you do? What was important on that day? If you are really that person, something important happened on that year. What was it? Allow the spirits to tell the story. Allow the spirits to go through and provide those kind of information spontaneously without being an interrogatory. And they will do so. They will do so because they want to help us. They will do so because in the process of communication, of communicating, of telling a story, those things may come up. So as just an example, when the spirit does not reveal things of the intellectual matter. Intellectual matter is up for us to do over here and figures out here. But they are not forbidden to do so. And From time to time, they will do so. But as a part of a story or something they're telling, it's an example of Andrea Luiz revealing some parts of brain anatomy and physiology that was completely ununderstood and actually was considered to be wrong at a time. And only with the advancement of functional MRIs that we could see that indeed everything that he related in terms of that brain physiology and anatomy was absolutely correct. But not because he had to prove anything, not because he wants to review something of human anatomy, but because it's part of telling that story, a part of letting us know what he was observing. He put out those observations that was at that time unaware to us. So let's say if a spirit provides a communication to Kardec, at that time Kardec was doing the studies, and it says, oh, in my past incarnation, although I lived in Paris, I had an uncle who became famous because in the country in the country part of France, and he becomes very famous because of the, I don't know, because of the peaches that he grew, or because of the ducks that he was able to grow, a very special variety. And you could go ahead and verify those informations. You know, the spirit we signed such and we signed to be such and such. Did he live in Paris? Yes. Did he have an uncle that was a famous farmer? Yes. But not because we interrogate them, we force them to reveal those things. It comes naturally in a conversation, and we have to pick up those clues, pick up those. If us really interested in that, identifying that spirit, we can pick up all those clues, put them together, and have a very reasonable confirmation that indeed the spirit who signs whatever it signs is indeed that spirit, or create a degree of suspicion that it may not be. But when we're dealing with more evolved spirits, as this passage over here, they have no idea no intention to fool others anyway. So chances are that everything that they say can be verified and be found to be true. Okay, continue. Questions?
Okay, 259. A method that is sometimes used successfully to confirm identity whenever the spirit is a suspect is to make it affirm in the name of Almighty God that it is who it says it is. A usurper will often falter before committing sacrilege. After having begun to write, I affirm in the name of, it will stop and angrily scribble some meaningless marks or break the pencil. A more hypocritical spirit will skirt the problem by omitting something, for example, writing, I assure you that I am telling the truth, or I affirm in God's name that it is I myself who is speaking to you, etc. However, there are some who are not even that scrupulous, who will swear by anything you want them to. One of them used to communicate with a medium saying, I am God himself. And the medium, being highly honored with such elevated grace, did not hesitate to believe it. When we evoked it, it did not dare keep up the charade and said, I am not actually God, but I am his son. So then, you're Jesus? Of course, this was not probable, because Jesus is too elevated to resort to subterfuge. Do you dare affirm in God's name that you are Christ? I didn't say I'm Jesus. I said, I'm a son of God because I'm one of his creatures. We should conclude from this that when a spirit refuses to affirm its identity in the name of God, it is always proof that the name it is using is fraudulent. But an affirmation only provides us with the presumption and not the proof of identity.
Okay, very good. Sorry. So one of the things that we could use, but personally, and that's very personal, I don't put much faith on that, is to ask the Spirit to affirm they stand the truth in the name of God, in the name of the Almighty. I think that works well, come from a somewhat religious spirit, for especially for the spirit who is still has some fear of God, that you would not dare to lie in the name of God. That would be too much of a sacrilege. But and Kardec says over here that some of them don't care anything. They will be hypocritical about towards anything, and they will swear to anything they want that we want them to, and make no difference to them. That if I am an atheist, if I don't believe in God, end up in the spiritual world, now I'm aware of our spirituality, it doesn't mean that I'm start believing in God. Okay, now I know that our life goes beyond the physical. But I haven't seen God yet. What is the so-called God? Now that I'm here in the spiritual, should I be seeing God already? There is no God. And if you want me to swear by God, I don't want to lie to you. I'll swear to God, I'll swear to whatever you want. It means nothing to me. So I believe to ask a spirit to swear that you stand the truth in the name of God is of some value, depending on the spirit that it is. And some spirit will do anything, even calling themselves God. And have a medium to believe that, I'm sorry to say, but that spirit, that medium that's to me is beyond vanity, is beyond pride. It's just plain stupidity. It goes beyond being vain, being really dumb. And and the other spirit does not lie at all. It says, I'm a son of God. Well, I am a son of God. You're a son and daughter of God. It's nothing, there's no lie there. Does it mean you are Jesus? No. Does it mean that I am Jesus? No. So the spirit over there, it get away with that in a very good way. By saying I'm a son of God, you're not lying, tell the truth. You're a son of God. And then if that's enough for you to believe in that spirit, you are in serious trouble as well. And then the very paragraph, Kardec says that swear is not an absolute proof of identity. If I swear that my name is Abraham Lincoln in the name of God, I'm still not Abraham Lincoln, and he didn't swear it. But it brings a little bit more comfort, but it's not an absolute proof of anything. Okay, questions, comments? Okay, can read more.
Okay, 260.
Yes.
It's not up yet. Okay. 260. Among the proofs of identity, we may also place similarity of writing and signature. However, such a means of proof is not available to all mediums, and neither does it represent a foolproof guarantee, for there are forgers in the spirit world as well as in our own. Therefore, there is only a presumption of identity, which acquires value only within the circumstances in which it is produced. The same applies to all physical signs, which some individuals provide as talisman and cannot be imitated by deceiving spirits. However, for spirits who dare perjure themselves in God's name or who imitate a signature, no physical sign could possibly present much of an obstacle. The best of all proofs of identity is in the language and unforeseen circumstances.
Um, with the issue of handwriting style and calligraphy, it can only be really considered a few things here that makes it very difficult. One of them would have to be a mechanical or unconscious medium, right? Because you're fully unconscious, you're pretty much going to write with your own handwriting. There may be exceptions to the rule, but in general, we expect that some medium who can change its own handwriting, its own calligraphy, and undertake the handwriting, the calligraphy of the speaking of the writing medium would have to be in an unconscious state. And even unconscious medium may not have such an ability, may still continue to write with its own handwriting regardless of being fully unconscious. So it has a lot to do with the medium itself when it comes to it. But yes, if it's a medium that has the ability of changing its handwriting in accordance to the messenger, to the spirit writing that message, it can be used, but it's still not an absolute. But that says there is fraudulent people there just as much as here. And I'll perhaps imagine that over there, perhaps they have more time to practice. They can even perfect the fraud calligraphy even better than we can do over here. So that's something for us to keep in mind. And individuals have some physical proofs over here. You may have to describe some defects here or there that they had. Useful? Yes, again, everything is useful, but everything putting together to form that perfect picture that leaves us with no doubt. But only the best proof, what we can give us leave us without a doubt of the identification of the spirit is the language and what he calls here the unforeseen circumstances, being that what, as I told, that along the story that he's telling us, along the conversation he's having with us, he or she will describe passages of his or her life that can be verified, that can be put to a test. That you can go to City Hall and say, this such and such lives here on this street as the Spirit says did. Yes, it did, or yes, it did not. Something that we can actually verify. Those are the calls the unforeseen circumstances. And again, God, that comes back to us multiple times that the best way is to identify spirit is through its language. Okay?
Okay. 261. One can certainly say that if a spirit can imitate a signature, it can also imitate language. That is true. We have seen those who ignominiously assume the name of Christ, and for an even better deception, imitate his evangelical style by indulging in well-known expressions such as verily, verily, I say to you. If we would If we would study the writing without allowing ourselves to be influenced, however, deeply scrutinizing the thoughts and the character of the expressions, and noticing that alongside the beautiful maxims of charity, there are pure and ridiculous recommendations. We would have to be completely fascinated to be fooled. Yes, certain formal aspects of language can be imitated, but not of thought. Ignorance will never imitate true wisdom, just as vice will never imitate true virtue. The spirit will eventually show its true colors. That is when the medium and the evoker must use all their discernment and reasoning to separate the truth from the lie. They must persuade themselves that perverse spirits are capable of all sorts of fraud, and that the more elevated the name a spirit uses, the more distrust it should arouse. How many mediums have received apocryphal communications signed by Jesus, Mary, or some venerated saint?
Kardec says previously that the most important and then most infallible way of identifying spirits through their language. But then right in the very next paragraph it says, but some spirits can imitate a signature, they can also imitate a language. So it almost makes us feel kind of hopeless here. And it goes on and say that spirits may uptake some of the writing styles, uptake some of the languages of a historical personality, and use that in their messages, trying to deceive us. So his person come here and says that no, it's Jesus who is writing, and use some of the expressions that we see in the gospel. No, verily, verily, in truth, I tell you. We start by asking, what do you wish me to do? Things that, when we read the gospels, we see those expressions over and over and over again. The Spirit may use those little expressions that is in the gospel that they say Jesus is used commonly, and use them. But the important thing is to say, is to see what's followed. So the Spirit will say, verily, verily, I say to you. And then you say to me, what? The verily, verily is quite meaningless. I want to see, what is it that you say to me? Is it in a complete accordance with Jesus? Is it in complete accordance with his teachings? And if the very first paragraph is so, let's continue. Let's continue. Because we will reveal ourselves. For as good as we may be, the best that we can be in pretending to be someone else, we will eventually reveal ourselves, especially when we are pretending to be something that is way above us, way above our knowledge, way above our understanding. Eventually, we will reveal ourselves. If I start, if I sit and as pretend that I'm Einstein, I'm not going to last 2 minutes. As much as I study Einstein, as much as I try to memorize some of his things, eventually they're going to see that I don't have the ability to speak of physics as Einstein did. There is no way that I could belong on this falsehood. And take even Christ out of the equation because it's such an absurd even trying to do so. Let's not bring down to something more like our level. Let's say they're trying pretend to be Francisco Canto Xavier. Now, it's not going to be too long before I reveal myself because I don't have the ability to 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 pretend to be someone so morally correct when I am not. Just give time. Just give, allow the spirits to go and do all the stuff that eventually he or she will reveal him or herself. There is no way to escape from that. Unless, of course, we are fascinated. If you're in this pathological state of being fascinated by spirit, then you believe everything it says. Because we're not gonna see the revelations that is contained in that message. If I convince one of our mediums that I am Chico Xavier and I tag his or her pride and vanity and make him or her to believe it, that I am Chico Xavier, everybody in the center will know that I am not, except that medium. And that medium, you absolutely say that everybody is wrong and only him is right. Only he is able to recognize that I am indeed Chico Xavier. But outside that, the spirit will reveal him or herself, because we cannot have double personalities. Eventually, we'll reveal our true selves, and it will be done through our language most of the time. What's important is for us to apply reason above passions, above emotions at all times. It's very gratifying to receive a message of Mary of Magdalene. Is it possible? Absolutely possible. No one can say it's impossible, but we have to apply reason and go and dissect that message very carefully before we take that it was indeed Mary of Magdala. That is important to protect the group. That is important to protect the doctrine itself, because if you're writing, taking things and publish a message that says it's from Mary of Magdala, and a student of the Bible, a student of Christianity, gets to their hand and say, look at those idiots in spiritism. Look all the falsehoods over here. I can prove through this message that this is not Mary of Magdala. We cannot do that to our doctrine. We cannot do that to ourselves, to our center. And we cannot do that to Mary herself. Very important also, they have to protect also that personality.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Distinguishing between good and evil spirits. 262. If the perfect identification of spirits is in many cases a secondary, unimportant issue, the same cannot be said concerning the distinction between good and evil spirits. We may be indifferent as to their individuality, but never their quality. In every instructive communication, this is the point upon which we must concentrate our attention, since only it can provide us with a measure of confidence that we can put in the manifesting spirit, no matter what name it has assumed, is the Okay. Is the spirit who has manifested itself good or evil? To what degree of hierarchy does it belong? That is the crucial question.
This is kind of difficult.
Mm.
We talk up to now between identification of spirits. Is that signature really correlates with the message, it correlates with the personality that signs that signature. So sign that it's Paul of Tarso. Does it has the characteristics of Paul of Tarso? It carries the moral values that you expect from a Paul of Tarso. Now here, regardless of the signature, regardless of the spirit identifying him or herself, is really the level of moral evolution with that spirit that is more important. That's more perhaps more important to us. Between good and evil, between morally evolved and morally unevolved. Why is it important? For the same reasons that we just covered already. We need to protect ourselves. We need to protect those who are going to read those messages. We need to protect the doctrine. And by putting out falsehoods, putting out messages of low quality, of low moral values, we do a disfavor to everyone. Don't help anyone and may create tremendous amount of problems out there. So you need to have some guidelines to distinguish good from bad, useful from not useful. And again, it's very important that when Kardec uses between good and evil, he almost like correct himself when he says, the spirit has manifested itself good or evil. To what degree of the hierarchy does it belong? So this is perhaps even more important. To what degree of hierarchy does it belong? In the moral scale, of course, right? Not necessarily evil in the sense of harmful, trying to cause harm, trying to hurt people, but evil in a sense of unevolved, on a very low, um, on the scale of moral evolution. Okay.
263. As we have stated, we judge spirits by their language in the same way as we do people. Let us suppose that a man receives 20 letters from persons he does not know. By their style, ideas, and numerous characteristics, he will be able to tell which are educated and which are uneducated, which are polite or impolite, superficial, profound, frivolous, proud, serious, sentimental, etc. The same applies to spirits. We should regard them as unknown pen pals and ask ourselves what we would think of their knowledge and character if they stated or wrote such things. We can state as an invariable rule, without exception, that the language of spirits always corresponds to their degree of evolution. Truly high order spirits do not limit themselves to saying only good things, but they say them in terms that absolutely exclude any trivialness. No matter how good statements may appear to be, if they are stained with a single expression of low quality, it provides us with an unquestionable sign of inferiority. And even more so if the communication offends social values because of its grossness. Language always reveals its origin, whether by thought or by form. Thus, even if a spirit wanted to deceive us with its pretended superiority, we would only have to converse with it for a while to discern its true character.
Okay. I've stated over here that, sorry, I've stated over here that we judge or we see, we don't judge, we see where the spirit finds itself on a scale of moral progress, primarily to their language. Now, we also know that there is a symbiotic relationship of moral intellectual progress, that they kind of work together, one pushing the other. When we receive messages from highly evolved spirits, when we receive messages from Emmanuel, from Bezerra de Menezes, from any higher spirit we receive, we can identify that immediately not only the elevated moral content of that message, but we can also see the language itself, the choice of words, the ability to be objective and concise, to not waste too many words to express a thought, which sometimes makes the reading more difficult for us. But that again is another way that they can use to help us to progress. The selection of the vocabulary, the extension of the lexicon, which also make the reading a little bit difficult for us. Anyone who wants to understand Joana de Angelis, Emmanuel, better do the reading with the dictionary by the side and make sure that you go to the dictionary. And if you really want to understand, you're going to have to go to the dictionary quite often, at least I do, right? Not that they are showing off, but that's what they are. You know, if a PhD in philosophy wants to give a lecture to kindergarten, it will use, or she will use, a vocabulary as simple as possible for that kindergarten. But it still be a little challenge for that kindergarten because that PhD, when it's dealing with his top philosophy, have perhaps even lose the ability of lowering the vocabulary to the level that would be make it easy to a kindergarten. And if it tries so hard, it becomes even untruth, because the difficult subject is difficult for its nature. And the only way to understand is to put tremendous amount of effort to get up there. In this way, I can identify spirits as well. Profanity. If you find any kind of profanity in the messages of Joana de Angelis of Emmanuel, you know it's not them. If you find continuous errors of grammar, of the rhyme itself, you know it's not them. It's just not. Because they do not write like that. You know there is somebody who's trying to deceive us. But through the language, we can indeed reveal the spirits. And again, as experts over here, just give them time. Just allow them to write. Just allow them to go on. and they will reveal themselves.
Mm.
See, the language of spirits always corresponds to the degree of evolution. Truly higher spirits do not limit themselves to saying only good things, but saying what's necessary to be said. They do not come over here and just step on our back and say how great we are, but they come say and say what we are, the great and the bad. And how can we improve on the bad naturally? If you receive messages from a higher spirit who only points how great we are, how wonderful we are, that's extremely suspicious right then and there. Because I know I'm not. So don't start lying about me to myself. Right? So there's many ways that we can use the language. And if allow them to go and speak and speak and speak, then eventually they will reveal themselves. But that puts over here does. Even if a spirit wants to deceive us with its pretended superiority, we would only have to converse with it for a while to discern its true character.
Mm.
I would argue that it may be difficult at times. Right? I would argue that some messages you receive is so filled with wonderful good words and things that makes you feel good, but when it take off all the things that make you feel good, all the big words that requires but the dictionary, there is no, it's empty. There is not a moral value on that. That's not coming from an evolved spirit. Primarily from an evolved spirit, their goal is to upgrade us morally. That's why, that's the only reason they use mediumship for. If you're not able to see it, to catch the moral content on it, it's not come from a higher spirit. Comments, questions? Okay, let's do one more.
Okay, yes. 264. Benevolence and kindness are also essential attributes of pure spirits. Okay. They do not feel hate toward humans or other spirits. They pity weakness and criticize error, but always with moderation and without bitterness or animosity. If we believe that true good spirits can want only what is good and say good things, we must conclude that everything in the language of spirits that denotes a lack of benevolence and kindness cannot have come from a good spirit.
Okay, so very important. To tell the truth is important. To present the truth in a benevolent way is a sign of the spirit. To use the truth as a sharp blade to hurt our pride, to make us feel bad, is a sign of unevolved spirit. And may they both may be saying the truth, but one you tell us the truth in a way that it leads us to review, to look into ourselves in depth, recognize that failure that you need to correct, and they will provide to us also guidelines for make that correction. An unevolved spirit may show to us that truth, hurt us with that revelation, and have no advice or solution on how to make necessary corrections. right then and there, you recognize a difference of an evil or ill-intended spirit and a more superior spirit. Again, a superior spirit is not gonna lie. Not gonna say that you are doing a good work when you are not. He may actually admit that truth if they feel that it's not the proper time to reveal it to you, but they're not gonna lie to you. And you know when doing a good job or not. Usually we do. Most of the time we do. So you don't need anybody to tell us. If they need to provide to us any truth that is not really good news, that you present in a very benevolent, kind way, and associate with that guidelines on how to improve, how to make things better. If it's not a truth, if it's a lie, it's not come from an evolved spirit. Or if it's a truth that is used as a blade to hurt us, to make us feel bad, to discourage us, it's not come from an evolved spirit as well. Como? Okay, any questions? You need to stop here, Billy. Yeah, 2 minutes left.
Yeah,
Go to the next one. Yes.
so I was just thinking here. Of course, Vivaldi is very well trained, and he's a good medium.
Yeah,
Excellent. It's an excellent medium.
Excellent medium.
Yeah. But I was thinking here, for example, in the case of he's doing this work with Joana de Angelis and so other different higher order spirits. And I believe that in these particular works, they're not like regular work. I think they present themselves in a way to help him to do his job. But my question would be, who would be able to evaluate their work? Because some of the work is way ahead of our intellectual and moral involvement. So I understand, we have to evaluate what Vivaldi has been doing in his entire life. I understand that. But let's say in the beginning, when Chico started work with Emmanuel, Vivaldi with Anna, Joanna, and when you get those messages, I mean, it's a matter of either you accept or not, because they might look good, but because of the language and everything, may fool one in a way that we won't be able to recognize, because again, it's above our pay grade. So how who or how that evaluation of the work it's being done before it's being published?
Yeah, it's a good question. So first of all, I know that you know that. I know that's not part of the question. Just want to make sure that we're here talking about identity of good and evil spirits, not mediums. Talking about the spirits, not the mediums. Okay, and we should be able to make that distinction of the values of the messages that is coming through Vivaldi or through anyone else, through you or through Vera, anyone else. We ourselves should be able to make that. It's not so much above of pay grade. Otherwise, they would not provide them to us. Why would Joanna or Emmanuel provide things to us that is way above our pay grade if we're not able to utilize it yet? Why would they waste the time providing to us? Does it require a tremendous amount of effort? Does it require us to really study them carefully? Yes, it does. But we ourselves can make that judgment. If you are receiving them now because you're able to do so, I don't think they would waste their time giving us what we cannot handle. Again, it may require more effort, more studies, but two things that very simple for us today is suggestion of Emmanuel himself. Refer to Jesus, refer to Kardec. If it's in accordance with Christianity, if it's in accordance with the codification of Kardec, you can put your faith there, you can put your money on it. When in doubt, refer to those two. Now, in order to make that evaluation, make our reference to Jesus, make our reference to Kardec, we need to do a little reading and understand of both Kardec and Jesus, the gospel of Jesus, of course. But we have Fidel provided those complicated, difficult topics because we are able to dissect them.
Thank you.
Sure. Not say it's easy, but doable.
I think only a handful of people will be able to do that.
No. I'd say that just about all of us will put enough effort. And rely on one another, exchanging of study group. That's the beauty of study group. It's picking up things from different angles and putting together those angles. We can have the whole picture.
Thanks.
All right. Good studies. This topic, it does not require much explanation. It's very simple, very self-explanatory. So it becomes hard to expand much on what Kardec's telling us because he's so detailed already. So we close with a prayer. As once again we elevate our hearts and minds, giving thanks to our spiritual benefactors, the good works of SG and Y, for being with us, providing us assistance to understand the messages, providing us assistance in our daily difficulties, giving thanks to our beloved Master Jesus Christ, for being with us, for carrying us, even when we act in contrary to his teachings. Giving thanks to God, our provider of all things, for all the opportunities for this wonderful doctrine. Asking dear God that I may be inspired to put in practice what the teachers I receive here. Send the vibrations of love, of peace, for brothers and sisters undergoing difficult trials, expiations, especially for those brewing hate in their hearts, thoughts of revenge in their minds. The love and the peace of Christ pacify their minds and their hearts. Send the vibrations of love and peace for brothers and sisters undergoing the difficulties with this pandemic, directly and indirectly, for active resignation, being able to endure the difficulties without rebelliousness, without loss of faith, that we may be inspired to be ourselves an instrument at the hands of Christ to assist in any possible way that we can. That we may be able to be back here next week in good health, ready and willing to study, to learn, to act. And we ask permission to close this meeting. So be it.